Good morning and good Sunday. Welcome to North Chapel. My name's Astemborski, and I'll be the service coordinator for today's service. We have a special reflection to look forward to today. North Chapel community members will be sharing their thoughts on freedom, which is the theme for our January services. As we prepare for today's service, please make sure your phones or any other beeping device is set in worship mode. Tatum is here for SE with the kiddos. If you're visiting, welcome, and please sign the guest book in the back of the church. And we'd love to have you join us for coffee hour after the service, which is held downstairs. Please look through your order of service for announcements regarding what's going on at North Chapel. There's always lots happening. And also, please feel free to take a poinsettia home with you today if you'd like. Those in the window are ready to move on to a new home. We are in need of some volunteers after the service. If you're able to help us take the tree down, we'll just be gathering by the tree. And time to take it down, which is a little sad, but onward to 2026. Remember to mark your calendars for the annual meeting, which is January 25th. That will happen after the service that day, so we hope everybody can attend. It's important. So here we are, our first service of the new year. I made a commitment many years ago to not do New Year's resolutions, but this January I did sign up for a journaling experience through Kapalo. It's online and it's free. The topic is exploring how we can walk in love as a daily practice. Love. Walking in love. As I'm now on day 4 of this journey, the prompts have made me think about how North Chapel also helps me kind of grapple with ideas such as this, or think about these concepts. It's a comfort to me to know that this place and our people help ground me each week as chaos goes on around us in the world. Whether we're exploring walking in love or hearing about what freedom means to some of our members, this way of thinking and being together gives me hope and the energy to reframe the chaos so I can keep moving forward. I thought I'd share the opening words that introduced me to the journaling session. What does it mean to walk in the path of love as daily practice? Practice includes showing up again and again with intention and purpose. It is about engaging regularly in ways that help us learn and unlearn, remember and embody love, not as a concept, but as a way of being. To practice love is to make a daily commitment, moment to moment and choice by choice. Cultivating love takes tending, presence, and care. It grows over time. It is the path of courage, connection, and transformation, an exploration that shapes and teaches us. To walk in the footsteps of love is to choose it every single day, not because we have to, but because it is the way forward. Each step is the practice, over and over and over. Today's opening words are by John O'Donohue, For a New Beginning. In out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight, when your courage kindled, and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning. That is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure, hold nothing back. Learn to find ease and risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses that the world awaits you. We'll now have some silent time for meditation and prayer.
Good morning. I was thinking about, so when I got the message about reading, I was in France, visiting my family, and I thought about the word freedom. I talked about it with my niece, and then yesterday I talked about it with some friends. So I chose two things I wanted to share with you, two poems. One is by the Palestinian poet Musab Abu Towa, and the other is called Liberté by Paul Éluard. Paul Éluard was a French poet who wrote this poem during the Nazi occupation in Paris in 1942. So I'm going to start with the Palestinian poet. And also thinking about freedom, it's such a huge word. We could talk about it, we could write theses about it, we could talk about it for months, years. And this morning, the word that came to me to replace freedom is love. And when we feel free, we are seen, we are heard, we are respected, and it's a spacious word. A Litany for One Land, after Audre Lorde, by Musab Abu Towa. For those living on the other side, we can see you. We can see the rain when it pours on our fields, on our valleys, when it slides down the roofs of your modern houses built atop our homes. Can you take off your sunglasses and look at us here? See how the rain has flooded our streets, how the children's umbrellas have been pierced by a prickly downpour on their way to school. The trees you see have been watered with our tears. They bear no fruit. The red roses take their color from our blood. They smell of death. The river that separates us from you is just a mirage you created when you expelled us. It is one land. For those who are standing on the other side, shooting at us, spitting on us, how long can you stand there fenced by hate? Are you going to keep your black glasses on until you're unable to put them down? Soon, we won't be here for you to watch. It won't matter if you blink your eyes or not. if you can stand or not. You won't cross that river to take more lands because you will vanish into your mirage. You can't build a new colony on our graves. And when we die, our bones will continue to grow, to reach and intertwine with the roots of the olive and orange trees, to bathe in the sweet Yafa Sea. One day, we will be born again when you're not there, because this land knows us. She is our mother. When we die, we're just resting in her womb until the darkness is cleared. For those who are not here anymore, we have been here forever. We have been speaking, but you never cared to listen. So this poem, Liberté, by Paul Éluard, written in 1942. I decided to read it in French. I'm going to translate just a few paragraphs, the first 3 paragraphs. This is also a version of the poem that is smaller than the actual poem itself because it's very, very long. So I took the liberty to read a shorter version of this poem. So I'll give you just 3 paragraphs in English, and then I'll read it in French. Liberty. On my school notebooks, my desk and the trees, on the sand, on the snow, I write your name. On every page red, on all the unwritten pages, rock, blood, paper, or ash, I write your name. On the jungle and the desert, on the nests, on the yellow flowers, on the echo of my childhood, I write your name. Liberté de Paul Éluard. Sur mes cahiers d'écolier, sur mon pupitre et sur les arbres, sur le sable, sur la neige, j'écris ton nom. Sur toutes les pages lues, sur toutes les pages blanches, pierre, sang, papier ou cendre, j'écris ton nom. Sur la jungle et le désert, sur les nids, sur les genêts, sur l'écho de mon enfance, j'écris ton nom. Sur les merveilles des nuits, sur le pain blanc des journées, sur les saisons fiancées, j'écris ton nom. Sur tous mes chiffons d'azur, sur l'étang soleil moisi, sur le lac lune vivante, j'écris ton nom. Sur les champs, sur l'horizon, sur les ailes des oiseaux, et sur le moulin des ombres, j'écris ton nom. Sur chaque bouffée d'aurore, sur la mer, sur les bateaux, sur la montagne démente, j'écris ton nom. Sur la mousse des nuages, sur les suaires de l'orage, sur la pluie épaisse, j'écris ton nom. Sur les formes scintillantes, sur les cloches des couleurs, sur la vérité physique, j'écris ton nom. Sur la lampe qui s'allume, sur la lampe qui s'éteint, sur mes maisons réunies, j'écris ton nom. Sur mon chien gourmand et tendre, sur ses oreilles dressées, sur sa patte maladroite, j'écris ton nom. Sur le front de mes amis, sur chaque main qui se tend, j'écris ton nom. Sur la vitre des surprises, sur les lèvres attentives, bien au-dessus du silence, j'écris ton nom. Et par le pouvoir d'un mot, je recommence ma vie. Je suis née pour te connaître, pour te nommer liberté. And by the power of one word, I start again my life. I was born to know you, to name you, liberty. Et par le pouvoir d'un mot, je recommence ma vie. Je suis née pour te connaître, pour te nommer, liberté.
So the reading that I wanted to share is a letter to the Pope from Havana, Cuba, by Asada Shakur, written in March 1998. One moment. Yeah. The United States is becoming a land more hostile to Black people and other people of color. Racism is running rampant and xenophobia is on the rise. This has been especially true in the sphere of domestic policy. Politicians are attempting to blame social problems on Black people and other people of color. There have been attacks on essentially all affirmative action programs designed to help correct the accumulated results of hundreds of years of slavery and discrimination. In addition, the government seems determined to eliminate all social programs that provide assistance to the poor, resulting in a situation where millions of people do not have access to basic health care, decent housing, or quality education. It is with great happiness that I read the Christmas message that Your Holiness delivered. I applaud you for taking up the cause of the poor, the homeless, the unemployed. The fact that you are addressing the issues of today, unemployment, homelessness, child abuse, and the drug problem, is important to people all over the world. 1/3 of Black people in the United States live in poverty, and our communities are inundated with drugs. We have reason to believe that the CIA and other government agencies are involved in drug trafficking. Although we live in one of the richest, most technically advanced countries in the world, our reality is similar to an undeveloped third world country. We are people who are truly seeking freedom and harmony. All my life, I've been a spiritual person. I first learned of the struggle and sacrifice of Jesus in the segregated churches of the South. I converted to Catholicism as a young girl. In my adult life, I had become a student of religion and have studied Christianity, Islam, Asian religions, and the African religions of my ancestors. I've come to believe that God is universal in nature, although called different names and with different faces. I believe that some people spell God with one O, while others spell it with two. What we call God is unimportant as long as we do God's work. There are those who want to see God's wrath fall on the oppressed and not on the oppressors. I believe that the time has ended when slavery, colonialism, and oppression can be carried out in the name of religion. It was in the dungeons of prison that I felt the presence of God up close, and it has been my belief in God and in the goodness of human beings that has helped me to survive. I am not ashamed of having been in prison, and I certainly am not ashamed of having been a political prisoner. I believe that Jesus was a political prisoner who was executed because he fought against the evils of the Roman Empire, because he fought the greed of the money changers in the temple, because he fought against the sins and injustices of his time. As a true child of God, Jesus spoke up for the poor, the meek, the sick, and the oppressed. The early Christians were thrown into lions' dens. I will try and follow the example of so many who have stood up in the face of overwhelming oppression. I am not writing to ask you to intercede on my behalf. I ask nothing for myself. I only ask you to examine the social reality of the United States and to speak out against the human rights violations that are taking place. On this day, the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., I am reminded of all those who gave their lives for freedom. Most of the people who live on this planet are still not free. I ask only that you continue to work and pray to end oppression and political repression. It is my heartfelt belief that all the people on this earth deserve justice, social justice, political justice, and economic justice. I believe it is the only way that we will ever achieve peace and prosperity on earth. I hope that you enjoy your visit to Cuba. This is not a country that is rich in material wealth, but it is a country that is rich in human wealth, spiritual wealth, and moral wealth. Respectfully yours.
So when Mary a couple days ago asked me to do a reading today, I thought, freedom and justice? What the hell do I know about that? What could I say? What could I add to this topic? And after some resistance, I gave it some thought, and then I cheated. I asked a friend who's a little wiser, and she asked me some questions. She said, when do you, oh, by the way, I'm going to exercise freedom by not just reading one passage, I'm going to quote a few things. She said, when do you feel most free in life? Where do you feel bound when you notice you aren't actually free? She reminded me of two teachings that we had discussed and I had learned about in the last few years. The first was the Buddhist perspective, really, on freedom and justice, which is all about how we meet suffering in ourselves and one another and the world. This is something that I struggle with. And an essay by Mika Kashan, which is called Nonviolent Communication as a Path of Liberation, builds on this by describing freedom and justice as something that also must be cultivated within us and between us. I like this idea because it talks about how freedom begins with freeing ourselves with conditioned ways of thinking and reacting, which is not about, law or policy or institution as we traditionally think about it, and how I started thinking about it when Mary asked me this question. It's really about how we show up in community every day and go to work and appear with our families. It reminded me of a New Year's resolution that I have been trying to implement, which is to act as my wiser self and act from the position of being a 51-year-old man who has had a career and has a family, instead of a 14-year-old child who was angry about his father leaving when he was 6 months old, and learning how to free myself from those patterns. I've come to learn that much of how we respond to conflict and difference is really shaped by habit. It's our conditioning, society and environments, and when we're caught in these learned habits, our choices narrow and we react instead of responding. So as I thought about this more and talked to her, freedom then really is this concept that's simply not the ability to do what we want, it's the capacity to choose, to pause and to notice what is happening within us and to act from awareness rather than fear. I read this book by Marshall Rosenberg. It's called Nonviolent Communication. He was a psychologist, and he wrote about the practice for transforming conflict and created a way to think about it. He wrote, this idea, it rests on the understanding that all human beings act to meet their needs for safety, dignity, belonging, meaning, and care, but when those needs are unmet, suffering arises, back to the Buddhist idea. And he said, it suggests that we meet suffering with attention rather than judgment, and with curiosity rather than blame. To quote someone else, Thich Nhat Hanh, he said, understanding is love's other name, and this is really kind of the underpinning of mindfulness. Noticing what is alive in us and others without immediately judging it, thinking about it in terms of right and wrong. So, if you're still following me, I started to think through this lens that justice is not primarily about punishment, it's about addressing causes of harm. It asks not only who is wrong, but what needs were ignored or denied, and how do we repair, and how repair might restore dignity for everyone involved. Justice, as Rosenberg wrote, it becomes a way of reducing suffering rather than redistributing it. Anyway, I like these ideas because they call on us to, and they come back to being in this community, where we think about how to expand our capacity to, you talked about showing up every day, and engage with life and others, especially in these moments of tension, and how justice can be achieved by choosing listening over labeling, presence over reactivity, and compassion over control. If we pray, we can practice a freedom that makes justice possible. So those were some of the thoughts. I think the one last thing I'll leave you with was what Kashan wrote about liberation. She described it as an idea that is collective. She said, we're not free when others are systematically silenced, excluded, or denied dignity. She says, justice requires systems that support cooperation, needs attending and care for all, not just for some. The pursuit of justice is also the pursuit of freedom, freedom from fear and from dominance and from the belief that some lives matter more than others, and freedom is something that we create together. So that brought it home here, and I think that's some of the principles that I witnessed here that we speak about. And it's funny, you start to talk about these things, and Mary Blanton asks you a question, then you start thinking about freedom and justice, and you realize there's a song you've heard a million times here. What is the song we sing after meditation? Spirit of life? And freedom and justice were in there today. I had never really paid attention to that, but it turns out freedom and justice are everywhere, and thanks for asking me to read today.
I loved hearing Dona Nobis Pacem. It's always been one of our family favorites. And over Thanksgiving, Heather and I decided we should do that after, as we were getting ready for dinner. And I realized the importance of a conductor because we had 16 people singing their hearts out, but everybody seemed to be on a different verse at a different time. The spirit was there, but it did not sound like that. Anyway, I was taken a little aback when I said, sure, I'll do a reflection. And then when I found out it was on freedom and justice, I began to think, how do you separate that from political and spiritual? Because I wanted to speak on the spirituality of it rather than getting into politics, which is always a concern for me at church, that we try to focus on the spiritual aspect of things. But as always, I found it inspiring to have the opportunity to think more about these concepts. And I also, with all that's going on in the world right now, I was trying to find things, and I did find some things that felt really inspiring to me as compared to being terrifying with what's going on in the world. But the first piece that I'm going to read is called Proof, and it's by Cornelius Eady, and he was asked to speak at the inauguration of Zoran Madawi. And I found it really, the whole thing this weekend of the inauguration, both Madawi's speech and this was all very inspiring to me about where we're going. So the first poem is Proof. Proof. You have to imagine it. Who said you were too dark, too large, too queer, too loud? Who said you were too poor, too strange, too fat? You have to imagine it. Who said you must keep quiet? Who heard your story and then rolled their eyes? Who tried to change your name to invisible? You've got to imagine. Who heard your name and refused to pronounce it? Who checked their watch and said, not now? James Baldwin wrote, the place in which I'll fit will not exist until I make it. New York, city of invention, roiling town, refresher and renewer. New York City, city of the real, where the canyons whisper in 100 tongues. New York, where your lucky self waits for your arrival, where there is always soil for your roots. This is our time. The taste of us, the spice of us, the hollers and the rhythms and the beats of us, in the echo of our ancestors, who made certain we know who we are. City of insistence, city of resistance. You have to imagine an army that wins without firing a bullet, a joy that wears down the rock of no, up from insults, up from blocked doors, up from trick bags, up from fear, up from shame, and up from the way it was done before. You have to imagine that space they said wasn't yours. That time they said you'd never own the invisible city lit on its way. This moment is our proof that things are changing. One of the things Heather Cox Richardson mentioned was the difference between freedom from and freedom to. And I pondered on that a bit, but which I think is very meaningful, saying that for most Americans, government regulations and investments in social welfare, like education and infrastructure, guarantee freedom to build a life that is not cramped by preventable obstacles, including those imposed by the wealthy and the powerful. I also thought I would share one or two lines, not just a very few tiny excerpts from Mandawi's speech to them. And I'm not a New Yorker, but I think that what they're doing really spoke to me. He said, I stand alongside neighbors who carry a plate of food to the elderly couple down the hall, those in a rush who still lift strangers' strollers up subway stairs, and every person who makes the choice day after day, even when it feels impossible, to call our city home. I printed out the whole thing, but there's just a few things I wanted to share. He talked about if only government dared to work hardest for those who work hardest. City Hall will deliver an agenda of safety, affordability, and abundance, where government looks and lives like the people it represents, never flinches in the fight against corporate greed, and refuses to cower before challenges that others have deemed too complicated. The authors of this story, the rebuilding of New York, will speak Pashto, Mandarin, Yiddish, and Creole. They will pray in mosques, at shul, at church, at gurdwaras and mandirs and temples, and many will not pray at all. They will be Russian Jewish immigrants in Brighton Beach, Italians in Rossville, and Irish families in Woodhaven, many of whom came here with nothing but a dream of a better life, dream, which has withered away. The majority will not use the language that we often expect from those who wield influence. I welcome the change. For too long, those fluent in the good grammar of civility have deployed decorum to mask agendas of cruelty. No matter what you eat, what language you speak, how you pray, or where you come from, the words that most define us are the two we all share. And he says New York, I would say perhaps Americans or Vermonters. We are the stewards of something without equal in our world. That love will be our guide as we pursue our agenda. And I'll skip here. A senator from Vermont once said, "What's radical is a system which gives so much to so few and denies so many people the basic necessities of life." I will encourage you to demand more of yourselves as well. So that was basically what I found to be quite inspiring. And I thought I would also add, because it's the new year, my favorite blessing for the new year, which I read the other day over at the homestead with some people, but it's called Benacht by John O'Donohue, the sacred space between us. Benacht. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the curragh of thought and a strain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishments of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life.
Closing words today are by Christine Evangelo, called Blessing for Peace. I hope that the darkest nights of your soul give way to the glorious days of your spirit. I hope that through the shadows of those heart eclipses born of solitary evenings, a new life is born and a change is set forth. I hope that you grant yourself the celestial passport your spirit has been yearning for. As you sweep into the deepest valleys of your soul, so you can gather the strength to soar to the highest mountain peaks, breathing in the angelic essence of you, fully, unashamedly, and unconditionally. I hope that you find the beat of your heart in every flower, every meadow, every delight that your eyes can truly see. For it is within that beauty that your spirit lives, a conscious connection, a godly reflection of all natural, ethereal fountains and springs. I hope that you can see beyond the clouds to the sunlight that is waiting to peek its way through. Remember, the blanket of sky that keeps you warm at night is one of a shimmering starry view. It is where you are held, always loved and at peace. A lustrous artwork of angels to whisper their magic as your heart speaks. May it be so. Blessed be and amen. Thank you for being here today and have a wonderful Sunday.